Is Jane Doe here? She better split. They want to allow it to take effect against other people whose names they don't have at the present time. And that claim is for damages, for obstructing or otherwise impeding or counseling others to obstruct or impede the movement or operation of the plaintiff's trains on the main line. And other related torts, as they say. A tort is something you can sue for. They ask for special damages. They say, in other words, monies that they lost as a result of this activity, and also punitive damages. They also ask in the statement of claim for a permanent injunction against them doing that kind of activity. So a statement of claim starts a court action, and it's followed by a statement of defense, where the defendants put their side in, and then it's followed by a quite torturous procedure of civil litigation. Most civil suits settle in the end. This one can be interesting to see what happens to it. But if it goes all the way, there's no way it would come to trial in less than 2 years or 3 years or sometimes 5 years. So that's sitting there, that claim and that action for damages. But then they have made a motion for what's called an interlocutory injunction, a temporary injunction, something pending the trial of this big action where they were asking for damages and a permanent injunction. And the notice of motion with respect to the interlocutory injunction is returnable tomorrow morning. So Sean came here for a dual purpose, tonight's meeting and tomorrow morning's court appearance. What they are asking a judge to do tomorrow morning is to make a temporary injunction, to make an injunction that would stay in place until the trial of the action. Now they have gotten some other temporary injunctions between April 20th of this year and the present. They've gotten those what are called ex parte. That means without the other side, without Sean being represented. You can go into court and in an emergency matter, you say, we need this injunction right away. But ex parte injunctions are only good for 10 days maximum, because the idea is that the other side should have a chance to respond. So they've gotten a couple ex parte injunctions, but then they served Sean with a notice of this interlocutory injunction to be argued tomorrow. Now, as you can imagine, there are, from at least our perspective, very complicated issues involved in both the statement of claim and the injunction. Very complicated issues, like who owns that piece of land where that school bus was? They describe it as the right-of-way at milepost 204.2 at the Deseronto Road crossing in the Tyendinaga Mohawk territory. Well, that's the way Mr. Brandt and his colleagues describe it too, in their territory. And the question is, how did CN get the right to trespass on their territory? And do they have a right to tell Sean he can't park a bus there? So there are complicated issues here, and I'm just beginning to learn, and there are many people we're consulting who are experts, and we will get a lot of information about CN's role in exploiting First Nations people and about expropriations by CN of chunks of First Nations territory from the 1800s to the present day. So this is going to be complicated, and we can't deal with those complications tomorrow. So we'll be asking the court tomorrow to give us some time to deal with those complications, and we'll see how that goes. So I would suggest to you that if you want to support our position on this, it's very nice if you come out to the courthouses from time. You'll have plenty of opportunity in the next couple of years, it looks like, and the first time tomorrow, because to my experience, it is important when courts realize that people who are, especially people who are under attack, like Sean Grant and his colleagues are, that they realize that there's real support out there for them. And so if you come and sit quietly in the courtroom, you may not think you're doing much. In my view, you're making an important contribution. So I hope I can see many of you tomorrow morning. It's going to be at 330 University Avenue. It's that's a courthouse in the Canada Life building. It used to be federal court until, I don't know, a year ago or so, but then the federal court moved and it's now used by some of the Ontario courts. So it's 330 University Avenue, right? And it's on either the 7th or 8th floor. What you would look for, the judge we're appearing in front of is Judge Campbell, so you'd look for Judge Campbell's list, and or you'd look for the style of cause, as they say, the title of the proceedings, Canadian National Railway Company against Sean Grant, Jason Maracle, Tara Green, and so on. So I'll be very happy to answer any questions later or something, but I think that you're all waiting to hear from, and I'm waiting to hear from Sean Grant, so I'll stop now.
Thank you, Peter. And if people didn't catch it, it's 10 o'clock tomorrow morning at 330 University. I was talking before about a relationship of struggle, and I have to be honest that trying to come up with the next introduction was also a struggle. Very corny, but it was extremely difficult, so I'm not even really going to try. I can tell you that Sean hasn't left the quarry for 56 days, and this is the first time that he's left the quarry. I can also say that Sean doesn't really need an introduction, but the courage to continually, controversially, and confrontationally take a fierce stand, one that is of great pride in the Mohawk people, pride in his family, but also, and I think this makes sense to say this in this room, part of what Sean has done is through fighting the battles on the territory is to instill pride in all people who struggle. That's all of you, that's all of us. And he's broken down and smashed some of those walls that the system has built between us to make real the thing that seems like an easy thing to say but isn't. That this is one fight, that we have to do it together, and otherwise we won't win. So I turn it over to Sean.
I guess it's been quite a while since I've had the opportunity to come to the city and talk about a lot of the issues. And I think probably since about 2001, before when we got together. In 2001, the Ontario Coalition Against Poverty started a campaign, and it was a campaign of economic disruption. It was a campaign designed to unseat Mike Harris and the Conservatives from government. It was a campaign that was to bring about attention to what was happening not only to sisters and brothers that lived in the cities and lived on the streets, but those people that lived in First Nations communities around this province that were suffering by the cutbacks and the indignities that were being perpetrated by the government at that time. I had the opportunity to be hired by the Ontario Coalition Against Poverty, and I was paid $250 a week for a year, and my job was to go around to those communities wherever First Nations people lived, in the streets, in the shelters, in the cities, on the reserves. And what we did was we went around and we said to people then, we're a part of a struggle, but in our communities we have infrastructure that exists beside our communities. We have highways, we have railways, we have hydro lines, we have gas lines. And I went to over 60 communities and carried the same message and said, it's irrelevant if you carry a picket sign and march down the road.